Hi, my name is Cody Casey, and tonight I'm going to be talking about differentiated instruction. So, what is differentiated instruction? Differentiation means molding your instruction to an individual needs, and this consists of teachers responding to the variation of students in the classroom. When a teacher works or reaches out to individual or small group to vary their teaching to provide the very best learning experience possible, this is an explicit definition of teacher differentiating their instruction. Teachers can differentiate at least four elements: content, process, products, learning environment. And for those four elements, there's three bases for differentiation: readiness, interest, learning profile. And basically, these four classroom elements are things like content is what the students need to learn or how the students will get the information. Activity process is activities to engage the student in order to make sense of or master the content. Products is creating projects to ask students to rehearse, apply, and extend what he or she knows. And then learning environment is the way the classroom looks or feels, the setting of the classroom. So examples of differentiated instruction in the classroom. So some examples of differentiated instruction in the classroom is it's built around four elements of content, process, products, learning environment. So some of the things you can do is provide variations in assignments, split into small groups, and allow students to choose the way that they express their learning. So you want to set clear guidelines and routines for students, create learning stations. So some things you can do based off of the four elements. The one is content, use reading materials at varying readability levels, present ideas through audio or video, or visual effects. So, mold to the students' learning abilities. You can use reading buddies, use spelling or vocab lists at readiness levels of students, or small groups to reteach, or an idea or skill for struggling learners. So then for process, where you can build around your differentiated instruction in the classroom, you can do things like provide interest centers that encourage students to look into a topic with something that relates to them. And then you can also do things like varying the length of the time students take to complete a task in order to provide them that additional support for struggling learners, or to encourage them an advanced learner to pursue a topic in greater depth. So for products, you can do things like give students options on how to express required learning. So something like write a letter, and then you can allow students to work in a group or with work alone, and allow them to create their own product assignments. And as long as their assignments hit the certain requirements for the assignment they're working on. Okay, so then for learning environment, I'm thinking that setting out clear guidelines for the independent work so that matches the individual needs, and then developing routines that allow students to get help when teachers are busy with other students and they cannot help them immediately. So, and then I also think create learning stations. So watching a video, creating artwork, completing a puzzle, those type of things. So just different learning stations where students can interactively work, and that will help the learning environment with differentiated instruction. But a good example of something to do when students are interactively working and you can't get to them immediately, something you can do is ask them questions, or have them write down something, or do a color, something of that sort. So there's many examples of things you can do for the learning environment. I'm going to move on to preparation. Organize the classroom and employee behavior management. So communication with parents starts with explain. So as a teacher, you're going to want to explain that all students will be challenged and that all students will be working on different activities and assignments. And then you're going to want to set ground rules like the teacher's role in the classroom. So things like it's going to be more student-led based or stuff like that. And then grades, you want to set ground rules on grades, how assignments will be graded, and then how activities and projects will go during the semester. So organizing the classroom. So with this, you want to work, or we're focusing on floor space, bulletin boards, and wall space. So for floor space, it has to do with arrangement of desks, storage, small groups, work areas, and centers, etc. And these are important for keeping an organized classroom, especially in a differentiated instruction situation. And then bulletin boards can be very useful. They can be changed up as the year goes on, but can also have things like information on assignments, rules, procedures, different, and those kind of things. And then, material storage. Use bins and boxes to organize supplies. Identify places in the room for students to place their homework. I think that's very important. And then clearly label storage materials. Then the next one is employ effective behavior management. And one of the important things here, two important things, rules and procedures. Discuss why, where, and when the procedure is needed and how it should be implemented. So explicitly teach and model the procedure. And then you should create opportunities for students to practice that procedure. So give them time to so they can thoroughly understand what is expected of them in the classroom. And then continue to monitor students as they implement and buy into the system that you have to provide corrective feedback. And then you want to provide that corrective feedback to them as they go along. Okay, so now I want to move on. So what does it look like? So the first thing you want to do is select one element of what you're trying to implement. And then you want to start with one subject area, start with the class of students that is easy to work with, and then implement only one differentiated activity in a longer lesson or a unit. So then you want to begin working with your students in a small group, assign homework for different groups of students on the three bases of readiness, like I said. So this is what it's like to do. So you want to select one element, start with one subject area. You just really want to follow all these guidelines as you go along. And the main focus here is you want to, you can only select one element at a time and start with one subject area. So now I want to move on to common classroom practices. So the first one is delivers instruction primarily by lecturing. So obviously that's not what we're looking for with differentiated instruction. Then we want to group students at the beginning of the year based on the previous year's achievement test scores. That's not what we want to do. And then gives bonus points for classroom participation. Obviously that's another thing, another example of something we don't. Okay, so one of the things we do know about delivery methods with differentiated instruction is that small groups are important to differentiated instruction, and not all students are visual learners, and that's about that really hits on varying the way you based off of students' needs. Some of the students might be more hands-on, some of the students might be visual, you never know. So that's why you have to vary the way you instruct them and the way you do the delivery method you use. And then for grouping students the way that it takes from the learning environment, I think that the main thing here is why it's on an example is because it's the idea of you want to have the idea of an inclusive and interactive classroom. You don't want to have grouping them by their test scores from last year. That's not the important thing to do here. And then bonus points are not necessary for participation, because participation in the classroom should be something that was set in stone as a classroom expectation or rule or procedure. So that's something there. And then, so here's some ways I would tell you to, improve or better this, or what we're going to do with differentiated instruction. So I think one of the best policies here is so you want to variate ways of delivery methods based off students' needs and learning profiles. We talked about learning profiles and learning environment and, the way students want to, how they're going to take that knowledge in. You can hit on all four elements in this, but you have to variate the way, you give the information or deliver it to them. And then you do not group students into small groups until differentiated instruction has been implemented in the classroom. So that's a good policy to follow. Do not split students into small groups until you have those things implemented before. And then you want to set out clear rules, procedures, and expectations for students, such as classroom participation. I feel that classroom participation should be one of those things that's written, it's set in stone, it's an expectation that you expect from your students, and it's a rule they should follow. So thank you for listening.